Could we get started, please? We're recording. There's no doubt about it. Happiness deals with the rational life. Aristotle was right, though he went a little far because he thought you're not happy until you're doing academic work. It pertains to the higher part of us, and he was right in that respect. Now, happiness, we have to possess the objective good, the goods of the objective order. And there's perfect and imperfect happiness, but the perfection of happiness lies in the possession of unlimited good. We may have a limited grasp of that, have a certain imperfect happiness. We may have all the goods of life, beautiful home and everything else, but all of that is an imperfect happiness. It's only a limited thing. But as St. Thomas says here, it is clear that man's happiness or beatitude cannot consist in material goods. The first reason for this is that such goods are not sought for their own sake, but are naturally desired because of something else. I knew a man who had speedboats. I think he had 3 of them. And he was happy only when that was going. But then later, he seemed to weary of it, as far as I could see. He was picturing taking films of his speedboats going. And he could tell me about the engine he put in, made by the Rolls-Royce Company of Great Britain. Beautiful. It was the very engine I had in my car, as a matter of fact, at the time. It wasn't a Rolls-Royce, though. But they made the Vanguard was the car I had. That was an English car. But all of these things don't bring happiness in the end. One tires of them. But all such goods are suitable for man by reason of his body. But man's body is subordinated to his soul as to its end. Remember, the body is in the soul rather than the soul in the body. Everybody, like that stupid physician, surgeon in Australia who said to me, he said, I've been operating on people and I've never found a soul yet. If he said that he had found one, I'd have thought he was nuts. But the soul is the ultimate reason the body exists. The body is the instrument of the soul. And every instrument exists for the good of the art that employs it. Form is the end of matter, just as act is the end of potency. The consequence is man's final happiness does not consist in riches or in honours or in health and beauty or in any goods of this kind. These are all St. Thomas's words. The second reason why happiness is not to be found in material goods is that such goods cannot satisfy man, which is clear for many reasons. First, man has a twofold appetitive power, the will and the passions. Consequently, has a twofold desire. But the desire of the intellectual appetite turns towards intelligible goods, which exceed the competency of material goods. In other words, what the will desires exceeds what the passions want. Secondly, material goods, being the lowest in the order of nature, do not contain all goodness, but possess only a portion of goodness, so that one object has this particular aspect of goodness, while another object has a different advantage, and so on of the rest. That the passions are never satisfied. Never satisfied. Look at even the rapist. He's satisfied by one act of rape, but then he goes looking for another one. Nor can full satisfaction be found even in a large number of such goods, no matter how much they may be multiplied, for they fall short of the infinity of universal good. A covetous man shall not be satisfied with money. So all these goods, remember, the object of our desire is limited good. And we tire of that. I've quoted this example, I've mentioned this example before about the little girl wants a dress. This was Father Woodbury's favourite example. She wants it, Mummy, I've got to have that new dress. I must have it. Then later, Mummy sees the new dress lying in a corner somewhere, thrown down. I gave a little girl a little carrying bag with a koala head on it. And it was, oh, great novelty. But then where is it now? I haven't seen it since. Thirdly, since man by his intellect apprehends the universal good that is not circumscribed by space or time, the human appetite, consistently with the apprehension of the intellect, desires a good that is not circumscribed by time. In other words, infinite good. That limited things are always limited in their goodness, and they exist in time and space. But the thing which is outside of time and space, namely unlimited good, that's something that is the only thing that will satisfy. Man naturally desires perpetual stability. Can it be found in material things? So none of those things satisfy. So he goes on. The human intellect, on the next page, too has some activity with reference to bodily things, corporeal things. For man knows bodies by speculative intellect, the intellect which gazes into reality, gazes at reality, that's the speculative intellect, and manages corporeal things or bodily things by his practical intellect. And so man's ultimate happiness and perfection cannot be placed in the proper activity of the speculative intellect or of the practical intellect that deals with material things. What did I do with that pencil? Oh, there it is. I hate to see things out of place, a comma out of place or something. So, in the second place, happiness is the ultimate perfection of man, as was stated above. And it's only according to unlimited good. But the soul even is not the best object to which its activity can tend, for it is aware that something exists that is better than itself. So man's ultimate beatitude or happiness cannot consist in the activity whereby he makes himself or any of the other higher substances the object of his intellection, as long as there is something better to which the action of the human soul can turn. So St. Thomas is taking all the possible activities we can do with our minds, with the intellect, or with the will. He takes them all and shows how none of them will satisfy. They're all limited goods. That's what the ultimate explanation is. They're limited goods. So I've taken Father Woodbury's explanation here. He says, what is an end? This Basic Morals book, by the way, was something he wrote for the University of Students at Sydney University. It's an unpublished work. I don't know how many pages, 80, 90 or something like that. It's Basic Morals. Beautiful little work. I wish we could get these things into people's hands, a lot of these things. I think you'd enjoy reading them. The trouble is they've got to be put onto the computer. They're all done, you see, the Academy started in war years, and all the things that were reproduced on an electric gestetner, which was the thing that did polycopying, and they're all foolscap size, which is slightly smaller than legal size in the United States. And all these works are on this foolscap size. I don't know why they call it that. I think they used to make a cap out of it, put it on their head or something like that. I don't know. I should try and look that up somewhere. But anyway, all these works are on that, so they've got to be reduced. I spent a lot of time editing one summer his Introduction to Philosophy, which is beautiful. Nobody tackles all the questions he tackles in the Introduction to Philosophy. It's only about 90 pages. Can you remember how many pages it is? About 90?
About that.
Something like that. And I was adding 6 appendices to it. That Introduction to Philosophy is a beautiful thing, and I'd love to get it into all of your hands if we could. However, it doesn't depend upon me. Does it? He's got it.
Give it to me, I'll type it. It's on the record now.
No, it's been scanned. They're big PDF files, but we can just run them off.
Oh, good. Well, we can do that.
Somebody, I didn't do it, someone else did it. They gave me the file of it.
Oh, good.
Just run them off.
Oh, yes. Bill Broderick.
Right, yes.
Yes, he told me that. That's right, I've forgotten that. Anyway, we could get that into your hands somehow. Maybe we could run them off and you could pay somebody, for the cost of the things.
Mhm.
Plus a little profit for himself
Yeah.
and his family. But it wouldn't cost very much. Anyway, now an ultimate or supreme end. Well, I've drawn out something here to show you. Oh, I keep seeing, what the trouble is on the computer, you can't see a period written there. And the result is it comes up on you can only see it when it comes up on the paper, on the printout. See, this can be illustrated on the next page. Paul asks for money in order to buy a book, in order to acquire knowledge of history, in order to obtain matriculation, in order to follow law course, in order to graduate as a lawyer, in order to gain his livelihood. Now, Paul asks for money. That's called a proximate end. That's the neighbouring end, the nearest end. Proximus in Latin means neighbour. So if you met somebody and say, hi, proxima, that means the woman that lives next door. Hello. Now, the ultimate end is gain his livelihood. That's the last one. All the others are intermediate ends. And they're means as well. They're ends and means to the next one. So what we're asking is, what is the ultimate end that gives happiness? See, gain his livelihood. Before we know we are, he's bored with that. He has to extend himself, buy himself a fishing tackle or a rifle to go hunting or something else. So the proximate end of Paul's asking is money. The ultimate end of Paul's asking is his livelihood. The ultimate end is the end for the sake of which other men are desired or loved, but which itself is desired or loved not for the sake of a further end, but for the sake of itself. That good which completely terminates and satiates the appetite. I should have put a square brackets there, enoughs. What is meant by ultimate end of man? That good which completely terminates and satisfies the appetite of man, which is nothing else than happiness. For happiness is the perfectly satiating good of an intellectual nature. Satiating comes from satis in Latin, which means enough. That for the sake of which ultimately man acts. But that's the satisfying end, the complete end. So we come down to this, down at big B, down towards the bottom. The last end of man can be defined as that good which completely satiates and terminates the appetite of man, for the sake of which man ultimately acts. That for the sake of which ultimately man is. That for the sake of which man is made to be, which is nothing else than happiness. Which, I hate these little periods that pop up everywhere. Which, as said above, is the perfectly satiating good of an intellectual nature, or the good which excludes every evil and fulfills every desire. But what is man's abstract happiness or ultimate end? It is God, and can be nothing else than that. You notice these periods popping up there on the line? I find it very annoying. It's not pleasure, it's not money. It's the only thing, as we shall prove later, which is unlimited, God. It's got to be good from every point of view, and he's good from every point of view. Good simply remains, remember, that which all desire. That's what the good is. Man's happiness is man's universal good, and man's abstract happiness is man's universal good, considered abstractly, from its realization in this or that thing. But we find it realizable in God, and God alone. I've tried to make this as intelligible as I can. It's a little complex, you might think, but you can read it through, and I think you'll find it'll make sense. And if you find you get bogged down in something, read ahead, then go back. But don't get bogged down in one particular sentence. If you read ahead, you'll find frequently what you read ahead has made sense out of what went before. So don't be sort of, it's a mistake people often make. Father Woodbury was telling me on one occasion, now he's a genius. His father Thornhill, John Thornhill, who wrote a splendid book on the person and the group, on social philosophy, and he said, we don't think like a genius does. And Woodbury was considered a great genius, extraordinary. You could see it in his face, these piercing blue eyes, etc. His father had exactly the same appearance. It was interesting, he told me that his father's body died a bit at a time, like a tree's trunks will die or the branches will die. And the last thing to die was the head. His brother, whom I knew, Ali was his name, he was a farmer, because Woodbury himself was brought up on a farm. I think he was the youngest of 12 children, if I remember correctly. And he was going to make it. Oh yes, Ali was a mathematical genius. Just what people might call an ignorant old farmer. And he could multiply a row of figures like that with another row of figures and come out with the answer. You might spend 10 minutes or half an hour with a calculator or something, and you'll find he was right. And he thought his daughter, who now is heading towards 90 and a good friend of mine, and Mary said to me that her father thought everybody thought that way. Couldn't understand it. No, others didn't think like that. Incidentally, Mary's a lovely person, but she's no genius. She came to visit me here, and I said, who on earth turned you loose? And some of the things she was coming out with were extraordinary. So what is man's ultimate end? It's that thing which is man's perfectly satiated good. And if we could only grasp that good is infinite good, we can prove that. We will be seeing this when we come to dealing with the proof of the existence of God. I always gave only one proof for this because I give them in metaphysics, the whole 5. But I've added a second one this year. The first and the third I think is good. The first 3 show the necessity of God's existence. The last 2 show his perfection, the necessity of his perfections. But I will show you all 5 when it comes to the time. But I put them in print, just the 2 of them. So, and I read today James Hitchcock's article, which is superb, on the post-Vatican II. It was written in 2003, and I had it at home and didn't realise I had it, and I read it today, and it's beautiful. And, sorry, I've lost my point.
Did you have Saturday call?
Pardon? You what?
Did you have Saturday call?
His article, yeah. It was bringing out... Oh, that's right. Atheism. Atheism is... I'd already come to this conclusion long ago. The temper of our time is atheism. Atheism is what is widespread. And I'm ready to fight and attack anybody who... I read something in a bookstore sometime while waiting at an airport or something like that, and I picked up this book. It's written by, what's his name, the biologist. He's an atheist. And he's dealing with God. It was just childish. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh, his name nearly came to my tongue. Can't think of his name just for a second. Anyway, the book it was childish. But that's what I found, men who deal with this. What a great blow it must be to them. When Anthony Flew, who had written books and always was known as a sort of an atheist, he's now a theist. He's been thinking, to his great credit, and he's rejected his atheism. I don't say he's a Christian. I had a woman sitting in one of my classes. Her husband was a professor of mathematics. And he was very worried. She has never been baptized. And she just said straight out, she was an atheist. She sat in my class and she went home and said to her husband, I cannot reject the proofs I saw. I cannot find a flaw in them. She said, but I'm a theist. That doesn't make me a Christian. Good girl, I said. You're being logical. You're being logical. And I knew she was doing that, not from self-interest, but that she was honest when she said that. Then later, I'm very happy to say she was baptized a Catholic. Then because of the bad example of Catholics, she left the church. Bad example of Catholics caused that. Anyway, so the possession of that, and it's all laid out very detailed here for you. So man's objective happiness, the possession of God. It's all laid out, and I've done it sort of somewhat, I've laboured it a bit, but I wanted you to see the necessity of all this. It's not any created good or any sum of created goods down the bottom of page 91. So here it is on page 92. It is not all these things. It is God alone, which is proved by the following. Now it's set up in formal argumentation. So read that through for yourself. Therefore well does St. Augustine say in the middle of the page, Thou hast made us for thyself, O God, and our heart is not at rest until it rest in thee. The famous book, can't think of the name for a sec. It'll come in a minute. You know, I thought I'd got rid of all these false periods here, but they're popping up everywhere. Which is man's perfect subjective happiness or ultimate end. The possession of God. And I've been told, it sounds boring. No, infinite is the good. Infinite is the knowability. Infinite is the joy. Can never be exhausted for eternity. So my God, it's worth fighting for. But one cannot reject that. No wonder great men like Aristotle, and people say, this is what I've been told, he was influenced by the church. 400 BC, influenced by the church? Aristotle saw this. Plato saw this. Socrates saw it. I put it in for you. Socrates, I put it in here, I did, didn't I? Yes, I put it in here. The Socrates' famous article, famous statement, which Woodbury said was probably the most beautiful thing that ever came from a pagan pen. And he said, if only mortal man may... Which page was that on again? I think it should be here somewhere. Where did I put that? I had to put it somewhere further on, because it already issued pages and page numbers, and I thought, it'd be out of place if I added that now. All your numbers would be out of place. Anyway, there's a natural and supernatural ultimate end of man. If man was left in his purely natural state, there would be difficulty. But man is God as possessed by facial vision, because it renders perfectly happy those who enjoy it. I think reading that through for yourself is about the best way you can study it. Me just lecturing on it, I'm just hitting high points. So read it through for yourself, those 3 or 4 pages. I've given you a bibliography down there. Now, oh dear. I detest this. I want to have perfect pages for you. When I see a little mistake there, I forgot to italicize a part of a title. Now, chapter 10, the unity of the human organism. Are there any questions arising out of that happiness, by the way? Anybody got a question or a difficulty or needs something explaining? That's why Catholics teach that there's purgatory. It's a clarification of our minds. It's a whitewashing, as it were. It's a correcting, so we'll be ready for the beatific vision. It's not that we may need the punishment so much as preparing us for the vision. And the more one in this life can prepare themselves for this vision, the more we'll enjoy it. Each person will receive the vision according to their mode, their own mode. Remember, quid recipitor, recipitor in modo recipientis. Of whatever is received in the manner of the recipient. So we'll receive it each according to our preparation. That's why it's important to prepare in this life for it. Raise the mind, the heart, as high as we can in preparation for the beatific vision. I'm not just sermonizing, I'm quoting philosophy at its highest state here. I wish we had time to do everything concerned with this. So, the unity of the human organism. Man is one substance consisting of two principles, namely matter and form. Remember, what St. Thomas said, the greater contains the lesser. The soul contains the body. It's strictly not true. I'll say why in a second. But it's truer than this, the body's in the soul. This is why it's not true, because the two together make one substance. I'm touching soul as much as I'm touching body. Or we should say matter rather than body. Body is the informed matter, informed by the soul. So, the body supplies the organs that necessary for rational, sensitive, and vegetative life. The human soul is in every part of the body, but not according to all of its powers. For example, the power of sight operates through the eye, and so on, for these are organic powers. They operate through an organ. But the intellect is independent. I thought I went through and corrected all these little letters. The intellect is dependently only objectively on the body. That is, for its object, the images in the imagination, which is an organic power. But the intellect is independent of the body for its existence and for its operation objectively. Now you remember Averroes and Avicenna said that they mistook Aristotle's words. He said that Aristotle said the intellect is separate from the body, or separable. Yes, thank you. Separable from the body. Why did he say that? Because he didn't have a Greek word to describe spirituality of the intellect. So it's separable. But Avicenna and Averroes took separable to mean separated. So I don't do my thinking, it's a great angel there does it. So they said it puts the ideas into my mind, the universal ideas which are too great for the images. So the human soul is in every part of the body, but not according to all its powers. The intellect is independent of the body for its existence and for its operation subjectively. The soul, as form of the living substance, is the intrinsic cause of this substantial unity and operation towards a common end. The subordinate powers are under the jurisdiction of the superior powers, especially the intellect, which is supreme. In other words, the will follows the intellect, and the intellect is supreme to all the the 4 internal senses, the 5 external senses, the 11 passions, and the 11 affects of the will. The intellect is supreme. We're one coordinated union. It's a coordinate substance, all operating for my end. Remember we started out at the beginning with this, somewhat, but this now we're in a different position so we can say it a bit better. Vegetative, sensitive powers and rational life are all coordinated towards one end. Remember the principle, number 5 there. There can be no coordination without subordination. Each organ and power exists for the sake of the whole organism. They do not have an end independent of the whole substance. Thus, internal finality. For instance, if you were to say to a cop, I didn't break the law, Sir Officer, is my hands did it, he'd laugh at you. All the powers operate for the sake of a common end, namely my end. Principle. A common end requires a common cause. But note the word organon in Greek is the same as the word instrumentum in Latin. The intellect can perform acts of reflection. It can know its own acts. Remember we dealt with that, we proved the spirituality of the intellect. It can also reflect partially over the soul itself. If we want to reflect over the whole soul, the only way we could do it is separation from the body. But in this life, the psychoanalyst, he tries to bring it to the surface, to the conscious level, by delving deeply into the soul. So, the intellect alone can perform acts of reflection. It knows its own acts, thus also reflecting partially over the soul itself. It's matter, the body, that stands in the way of complete and perfect reflection. But here I've brought out the modern terms. I can see a tree before me, that's conscious knowledge. I'm conscious vaguely of Joe standing beside me on the edge of my vision. That's subconscious knowledge. I cannot see what is behind me. That's unconscious knowledge. This is similar to our intellective knowledge. Now we go over the next page. 95. There is a depth within the soul which is almost unreachable by the intellect because of the impediment of matter. And I've written out there's a lot of rubbish, of course. A psychiatrist and I lectured before an audience in Australia on one occasion. It's amazing. He was a follower of Jung in experimental psychology. We had to study empirical or experimental psychology as well as some of it anyway, as well as the philosophical psychology. But there's a lot of rubbish also, and as John brought this out, some of which disturbs us, disturbs our thinking, causes us sometimes to remember vaguely things of the past, gives us fears and so on. Yet we have a great power there, often waiting to be released. Like a friend of mine in Canada, up north of Ottawa, the Gashnang family from Austria, and he retired, and he decided just to do some carving, wood carving. Next thing, he's collected prizes, national prizes for wood carving. He didn't know he could do it till he tried it. Father Woodbury, after a heart attack, started to do carpentry. He said, you don't know what you can do till you try it. You've got to bring out of the unconscious life your capacities for artistic activities and all sorts of things. You don't know what you can do till you try it. There is below the surface a lot of rubbish, as I said. Yet we have a great power waiting to be released. So we've got to actualize these powers. According to the principle of what sort someone is, such is the end which seems good to him. In Latin, qualis unus quisque est, talis finis videtur ei. That's very famous, that's why I put that in. Each one acts in keeping with his inner nature. Reveal ourselves by our loves. In other words, show me what you love and I will know what you are. That's what a psychiatrist does. He talks to the person and gets them free exercise, etc., association to surface things, and by the person expressing their loves. Like the fellow who came to a psychiatrist friend of mine. He said something like, what do you do that you like doing? He says, well, I'm a pencil sharpener, so I love sharpening pencils, you see. So, we have a great power there, often waiting to be released. Each one acts in keeping with his inner nature. We reveal ourselves by our loves, as I said. Show me what you love and I'll show you what you are. This is another application of the basic principle, do follows be, and the mode of doing follows the mode of being. For we each operate according to the formation of our character. Thus, the analyst encourages the patient to reveal their inner thoughts, their aspirations, their fears, their experiences, and so on, in order to try and discover what motivates that person, what disturbs them, and what impedes their freedoms. That's what the function of a psychologist, a psychiatrist is, to remove the impediments to freedom. That's what his function is. And he does it with drugs, etc. The psychologist just does it with discussing, etc. Different mode of operation. But to remove the obstacles to freedom, that's their function. Is the whole person who acts. The man drives the car, not merely his hands, etc. The man thieves, the man suffers. We know that when we are in conversation with another person, it is a rational being with whom we are speaking, not just a set of operative powers or organs, such as ears, eyes, and imagination, and so on. We know we're dealing with a human person. Now I've extended some of this stuff which I've had given before. We come to chapter 11, education. When I lectured on this at Niagara University to students who are practice teaching, and this is philosophy I'm lecturing on, they said, why didn't we get this during our course? They didn't get any of this. Then the department decided to set it up, some of this, the philosophy of education. So they appointed two men educators, not philosophers. And I dare say one of them at least that I knew nothing about philosophy. He called me, what did he call me on one occasion? A dogmatic? I've forgotten what he called me. I aroused a lot of jealousy at Niagara University because I taught positively. I didn't say, well, some say this and some say that. And it irritated a lot of people. This man one day stood up in a corridor and called me an autocratic dogmatist or something like that. I taught certain things and I didn't sort of give in to and say, oh, well, the current census on this campus is so-and-so, you know, and I got to go along with that.
Because you believe in objective truth.
Didn't believe in no objective truth, exactly. He said on one occasion, he said to the president of the university, when I think it was his first initiation when he was appointed, a new president, you know, Father, I'm right behind you, don't you? And I said, he wants you up there with him, not behind him. The president turned away and he said, and he was stunned. I was behind him. I was next to shake his hand and say, welcome to Niagara, or etc. I'm right behind you, yes, 200 feet behind you. So St. Thomas gives a clear definition of education. The making of a new man right up to the state of virtue. That's in the supplement of the Summa Theologica, page, oh, that should be question 41. Not page. Dear, oh dear. Question 41. And I've put down some clarifications that need to be said. Temperament, that's what we're born with. That's what gives you your temper, if you like. What we're born with. There are approximately 12 temperaments. There are 4 basic temperaments. This is classic stuff. Marion Horvath produced something on this. I've never seen it. I have no idea what it's like. I have 2 works, one in French and one in English on temperament.
Hers is based on Father Dominican and Father Lola.
Was it?
Yeah, it's quite good.
I'd like to see that. All based on the famous 4 temperaments which are found as composites in the individual person. None of us are simply 1, 2, 3, 4. We're sort of a mixture. We can't help that. But character, that's our temperament plus the habits we acquire through education, practice, etc. And that's the real character. Education helps us to become masters of our temperament so that we can practice self-governance in a rational manner. Self-governance is what we want to do, my friends. That should have perhaps be put in under the business about the unity. Self-governance. Me directing this vehicle I call my matter form, my bodily substance. Make us self-governance in a rational manner. Individuality and personality. Matter is the basis of individuality. Spirituality is the basis of the person. I know we've dealt with this before, but I put it in here for the sake of completeness. As shown above, great individuals, Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, are not necessarily great persons. St. Francis of Assisi, Aristotle, St. Thomas, John Paul II, Mother Teresa, and so on, are great persons. You might say St. Francis of Assisi was no great philosopher. Probably knew little, if anything, about philosophy, but he's a great person, and so on. Many potencies need to be actualized. We have them, and we don't know we have them till we use them or try them. The term education comes from 2 Latin words, e. If you have, in the Latin language, e becomes before a consonant, but if it's before a vowel, it's X. So exit, goes out. It's the same here. Educere, to lead out, from. That's what it means, to lead out from. As our capabilities, to actualize our potencies. There's a very good rundown and reference to all the great books of the Western world. I have that set. I've got the old set, thank God, not the new set. The new set, they've added about 6 or 8 books, 54 volumes, 6 books they've added. And it's modern rubbish literature. But the old ones, I was given it at the University of Montreal, the old ones have all the great books of the Western world. My friend Mortimer Adler, let's call him my friend, we knew each other, and anyway, he was the editor of this. And they collected it all together, 54 volumes. Volume 1 is an introduction to the whole series. Volume 2 and 3 is called the Syntopicon, and it's a guide to all the rest in the book. It's an index to everything. If you look up the word, it's all alphabetically laid out. Education in the first volume. You'll find all these references to education throughout the books. It's magnificent. I was given it, and Father Martinelli said to me, he was the secretary of the Faculty of Philosophy, he said, Monsieur Waters, he said, you really should have had this before you wrote your doctoral thesis, because some marvellous stuff in it. Though it's not perfect, there's some very important text could be put in there. But it's a marvellous reference. And you could use that for any kind of essays. Death, life, love, all these. There are 102 great ideas. They boiled them all down. They had 3,000 great ideas. They boiled them all down to 102. And the references are in this thing. It's a marvellous thing. I was speaking to a library where was I? Long Island. Speaking to a librarian there one time. She didn't know the set and said, oh my gosh, we've got to look into that. I don't know, it's a few $1,000s now. But education is an imminent act. Education is placing before the student in this manner, they don't grasp it. This manner, they do grasp it. Removing the impediments to the mind understanding. That's what education is. We lead out of the person their competences by placing before them in different ways what causes them to understand. Dr. Kinsella, a neurosurgeon, the Nobel Prize was given in 1963, I think it was, for his work. Somebody else stole it and presented it. But anyway, he said to me, you might put something in 10 different ways. It might be the 9th or 10th that the person grasped it. Before that, they didn't grasp a thing of it. That's what the teacher does. Uses diagrams on the board. He's working on the imagination. Uses diagrams on the board. And by the way, I'm disappointed at my own lack of using the board since I've come out of hospital. But however, we'll do our best. So it's the making of a new man right up to the state of virtue. That's St. Thomas's definition. In other words, drawing out of the person their capacities. Now, what do we mean by virtue? The 6 intellectual virtues, I put them there somewhere so that you could see them again, and the 4 moral virtues. That's went by the virtues. If they had, in my judgment, and I published this in an article and defended it, that a student should end up at least with 2 virtues. Wisdom in the speculative order and prudence in the practical order. Those 2. I've written that in here somewhere for you. So it's an imminent act. In other words, an act that the student does. Who's the educator? The student. Who is the educated? The student. It reduces the teacher to a little bit of nothing, doesn't it? He's the instrument the student uses. Takes the starch out of a few of educators that I know of. The student does the educating, and the student is received, the beneficiary of the education. The teacher is the instrument, and he uses this method, or that method, or some other method. I remember I had 125 nurses. Pardon me, 1 male and 124 female nurses in Ottawa. I was teaching, spread over 2 classes. And I said something about man, universal man. They didn't get it. Well, all right, what about universal bedpan? Ah, now I catch on. So they told me, when they talked about universal man, they didn't know what I was talking about. But when I mentioned anything like that, or a hospital bed, they knew exactly what I was talking about. There were nurses, all of them were RNs that came in to get a Bachelor of Science degree. And I taught the last batch allowed through the university. So, healing, growth, nutrition, they're imminent activities. Remember, they're activities which we do and which we benefit from it. They're the imminent activities. Transitive activities, look, here's a transitive activity. It goes from me over to that. That's a transitive activity. But imminent activities, when the mind grasps for itself something. And that's what the student is performing, imminent activities. And the teacher's assisting him in some way. I was in the student centre one day and there was a group of us around there, black and white students, only about 7 or 8 of us. One girl was having great difficulty, a black girl. Lovely girl she was. I was very fond of that young lady. And she just didn't get it. But suddenly somebody said something. Oh, I see now, she said, and she grasped it. The dean came over, he said, what's going on here? He said, you can see us all sitting around arguing vehemently there. And I said, this is the class after class. I said to him, he said, he sort of judged me as if to say, yeah, I know you're at home when you were students. Anyway, an orchestra conductor, he doesn't do the playing, he removes the impediments to the orchestra, impediments to harmony. That's what he's doing. Same as the students, the teacher's removing the impediments to the apprehension of the students. The surgeon, he doesn't cure the patient cures themselves. He removes the impediments to the patient curing themselves. Maybe draining pus off, maybe putting fresh blood in or something else, or introducing an antibiotic to kill off something that's impeding their health. But the patient does it. Imminent actions are done by the agent and received by the agent. So, a government doesn't obtain the common good. The government removes the impediments so that people obtain the common good. Therefore, Obama should not be giving out money as he's doing it. He should be removing the impediments so that the people can earn the money. So they get the money for themselves, earn it. And of course, you know my pet theory about that. Remove the impediments called anti-productive investment. Buying people out and grabbing people. When great things are happening in the United States at the moment. Who's some great car taken over, car manufacturers? Isn't it the Toyota taking over GM or something like that? All this kind of business is very evil for the country. So that's what the government should be doing. Helping the people to help themselves. That's what they should be doing. The orchestra leader or conductor, the physician, the government, and the teacher. The student does the act of understanding whereby he forms the habits. For example, arithmetic, history, etc. The teacher removes the impediment with examples so that the images can work better. Since the educator is the student, the educator is also the pupil. The educator, is the pupil. While the teacher removes impediments to the pupil's understanding, the teacher employs all kinds of devices to aid understanding by working on the pupil's imagination. He cannot touch the student's intellect directly. One picture's worth 1,000 words. That's from, a lot of this is in the work of St. Thomas called De Veritate, on truth. I think it's the 11th question, if I remember. I forgot to put that in. It is the 11th question. So, we'll take it up there next class, my friends. Thank you. Please be here if you can next week.